Tamara doesn't require much of an introduction for folks from the West Coast. So if you're not from here, Tamara is a former UX leader from Amazon. Since then, she's spent the last 25 years consulting with the biggest names in tech, 20 of it in with startups and five in Web3 and blockchain. And Tamara is a co-author of the Persona life cycle book, and she's created a, oh wow, that looks awesome. And she's also the creator of Align Before Design, which is a course she's developing for persona alignment. She's also the founding volunteer for a group called Never Search Alone, which is a great community for job seekers, and it's just based on the book. And you can learn all about it in the links that I've put in the chat. And Tamara hosts weekly session, bi-weekly sessions with the Never Search Alone community, where she shares a lot more resources and talks every week. So that's something that you'd want to explore. So yeah, without much further ado, thank you to Tamara for your time today, and we're excited you're here with us.
Oh, I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation. If you stop sharing, I'll be able to start sharing. Okay, let's see. La la la. Okay. Okay. Hi. Okay, so a lot of us are out of work, looking for work, freaked out about being out of work. And I've had a lot of experience thinking about that, and had my own challenges with making sure that I have enough consulting clients and all that other jazz, because I've been doing this for a long time. And as women come up through the world of technology, a lot of us start coaching other women to help, and other identifying people, as we come up, to help people who have a harder time getting jobs and careers and advancement in tech, with whatever wisdom we have grown in our years of work. So anyway, I've been very interested in how we get in our own way when it comes to negotiating or standing up for ourselves, and the differences between different kinds of people in how they approach that. And I've also been very tuned into my own hatred of negotiation. And this talk is a little bit unusual. It's a little bit unusual because this isn't a lot of data-driven stuff. This is a lot of stuff that just works for me. That's why I call it tips and mind tricks. And in order to make this talk more memorable, I decided to do what anyone would do, which is incorporate pictures of bunny rabbits. And if you know anything about bunny rabbits, because I'm also involved in a house rabbit rescue, they look like they're frowning almost all the time. And so I figured that we could use the displeasure of house rabbits to illustrate some of the wrong ways of thinking, and remind you that you don't want to make the house rabbits more angry. So it's maybe important to remember some of these points. And if you're inclined to take notes, that's fine. If you're not inclined, great, because I wrote up an article for you. I have a little one-pager to print out. So you could just sit back and enjoy being disapproved of radically by a series of bunny rabbits. So again, this is the executive summary. Negotiating sucks. It never gets easier. I freaking hate it. I've developed a few ways to psych myself out to be slightly better at it and to look like I'm more confident, but that's about as good as it gets. And I just want to share some reminders that help me. So let's keep this simple. I think all of us think we need to build the perfect elevator, and some of this is about stuff around negotiating. So we're sort of before you're in the negotiation process, and a lot of these examples will be about searching for a job, but they're just as true for me. And I haven't looked for a full-time job in a long time. I've been doing consulting work, so I use the same rules for myself. I think we go around thinking we need a perfect elevator pitch, and when you think of a perfect elevator pitch, probably what comes to mind is trying to think of the fastest way to race through the highlights of your resume in a minute or less. If you have ever been subjected to someone listing out the highlights of their resume in a minute or less, you will know that it's unpleasant to listen to. It's not, it sucks. It sucks to listen to somebody trying anxiously to like tell you everything that they've done in their whole life as a professional. And it doesn't really help. Even if you are hiring, hearing somebody spit out their resume doesn't help. So I think you need to rethink the elevator pitch and the way you go out and talk to people about who you are and what you're offering. And the best way to do that is to use what's called a candidate market fit statement. So 2 years ago, my friend Phil wrote this book, Never Search Alone. And I read an early version of it. I told you I've been coaching women for a long time, and it really struck me as right. And so I am one of the founding volunteers that makes this whole community thrive. It is 100% free. It is 100% not a scam. The only thing that costs any money is buying the book, and you can get that from a library. So this is such a structured process that I recommend it to anyone who is looking for a job or even just reconsidering how they present themselves, let's say as a consultant. So candidate market fit statement is an idea that came from this fantastic book where you get into a job search council and you go through these series of exercises to help each other get a job. One of those exercises is this candidate market fit. And as people in UX, we're all familiar with the concept of product market fit. And that's the idea that if you go out there and you want to create some fabulous new crazy looking mouse, you better make sure that people out there want a fabulous new crazy looking mouse. And you better make sure that you're describing that crazy looking mouse in a way that's going to attract them. So you wouldn't want to market this as an unusual oblong brown and black device with chrome. Nobody's going to understand. But if you advertise it as an ergonomic mouse, ergonomic wireless mouse, then you're presenting it in a way that's going to attract the people who are shopping for it. So the idea here is that when you are out there looking for work, you are a product and you are for sale. I mean, not you as a human are not for sale and never are, but you as an employee, as someone delivering work products are for sale. And so you have to create some kind of statement that explains to people what you are looking for. And it's a very specific statement. Like, for example, I'm looking for a senior individual contributor role in an established user research team in a mid-sized startup company focused in the healthcare space. We're all terrified to do that because we feel like we need to put a giant net out there. But the more you're able to describe who you are in the structure of what exactly you are looking for, that's an elevator pitch. That helps people know who you are very specifically. And no, it doesn't mean that they'll ignore you if they're not in the healthcare space. People are able to expand from statements like that. They're not really able to sort of contract and narrow in from big statements like I'll take anything in UX. Okay, so that's part of what builds your confidence, is knowing exactly what you're looking for and be able to tell people that instead of frantically trying to rattle off your resume. Here's our next disgruntled rabbit. We think we need to qualify for every single bullet in a job description. And again, negotiation starts with our level of confidence, right? I like to think of job descriptions as big dumb bullies. And there's also a study from Harvard many years ago, a bunch of years ago now, that says if men see one bullet in a job description they do qualify for, they will apply. If women see one bullet in a job description they do not qualify for, they will not apply, right? And I'm sure that applies well beyond cis women, right? So we look at these job descriptions and we immediately start to attack ourselves and convince ourselves that we are not ready for this job, or that the way they're describing it, I am not the person they're looking for because they're slightly different from the way I would do it. But we have to get out of that habit, because as professionals, especially in the world of UX, we may know better than they do how a job should be done. And they may be describing it in a bizarro or old way. Like, for example, they may be saying they're looking for a UX designer who is also a coder. And all of us know that that's a really old school way of thinking about things and isn't the way it should be done. That doesn't mean that you don't have a chance to get in there and correct them. But starting to realize that these job descriptions are not necessarily as smart as you thought they were will start to enable you to remember that you do know what you're doing, no matter how weirdly somebody else describes a role. This is Myrtle in Sherlock. Myrtle is the black one. Sherlock actually has no eyes, but he's happy as a clam. They belong to a friend of mine. We think that prep equals researching and writing stuff down and taking all of our frantic energy and taking lots of notes and figuring out how to figure out what we want to do on our own. That's like the worst possible way to do anything. And so that's why I love the job search council idea. Because you have 4 to 6 peers that you're doing all of this. What prep really requires is that you repeat key phrases that you come up with out loud over and over while another person listens. So for example, and this is directly tied to negotiation, for example, if you need a certain salary range, let's say you need 140 to 150, which I'm just pulling that out of my ear, right? You need to be able to say, I need a salary of at least 140 to 150. And you need to be able to say that without hesitating. For me, and I'll share this, like I work with startups all the time, and I realized that I needed one little package that was easy for them to say yes to. And so I had to get really used to saying, I do an initial quick hit package and it's 15K. And then I stop. I don't argue myself out of it. I don't say, well, I raised it from 10K for this and that reason. I just say 15K. And it took me sitting down with girlfriends of mine and saying that over and over and over and over and over again until I was comfortable. And that's one of the biggest thing I do with people I coach too, is just say it again, say it again, say it again, say it again. That's prep. And it's not about tons and tons of research. It's about some very specific things that you need to be able to rattle off with confidence and then be quiet. We're going to talk about being quiet in a couple more slides. Okay, very angry rabbit here. Fabulous orange color. I need to convince them that I'm perfect for the job as described. Not true. And I already told you that job descriptions are big dumb bullies and you should break them down for parts. Because if you've ever created a job description, you know that it's not done in some rigorous way. Most often it's like, hey, Philip, will you put together a job description for that head on Margot's team? And Philip goes, oh, and he does it and he rips descriptions from all over the place and whatever. And then they throw it out there and maybe it's good enough, or a recruiter does it or something. The job description, by definition, anybody who puts a job description out there has a problem that they need to solve. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're the ones to know the best way to solve it. So this is also out of Never Search Alone. And I know I sound like I'm selling this, but I'm selling something that's free. So you'll forgive me. A job mission and OKR document is a great way to approach this. When you get an interview, instead of the kinds of questions that Phil, the author of this book, recommends that you do is that you create your own document. At the top is the job mission. Why does this job exist? And what problem are they trying to solve? And underneath that, you write your own OKRs. OKR stands for objective and key results, because we're all in this field. We all know that you could spend the rest of your life reading about OKRs and still not read everything on them. But in this case, it's just what numbers have to change by how much in what time frame for them to know they hired the right person. Do they need to get out ahead of development by having a UXer come in and deliver 50 wireframes a week? Is that what they think they need? If it is what they need, even though that's a wacky way to describe OKRs, is it the job that you actually want? So what you're doing in this case is you're also building up your own confidence by asking questions and helping them think through, what is it that I actually want done? And if this job is not right for you, and many jobs are not right for us, but we get attracted to them like we get attracted to the, it's like dating, you know, and you need people to say, oh, that one's just like your ex-boyfriend, or that one's just like your ex-job, and you didn't want that again. We can catch ourselves by being an active participant in the interviewing process. And you can also use this document when you get farther along in the interview process to present to the hiring manager. And this puts you in a magical place to get the job and to negotiate. Because what you've done then is you've proven that you're a doer and not just a talker. And that's the primary job of the hiring manager, is to figure out the difference between those two types of people. And if you have created these very specific key results and metrics that you would be measure yourself by for this job, you also put yourself in a really good position to say, well, I might approach this one differently. And you also put yourself in a good position to negotiate when the salary conversation comes up. Okay, this next one, I'm going to start this with a little story. I'm going to have to be prepared for every possible scenario. And I say, you only have to be brave for 10 seconds. So there's this movie that I have extremely mixed feelings about and don't really love, but it's called We Bought a Zoo. I mean, there's so many reasons I don't really love this movie. It's got Matt Damon and Scarlett Johansson. Matt Damon is a widower who comes back to the town he grew up in with his two children after their mother has died. And of course he meets Scarlett Johansson because of course she's working at a roadside zoo in the middle of nowhere. And he brings his kids back to run this roadside zoo, and roadside zoos are terrible. So you can see my ambivalence. But there's one story that he tells. So they're walking down Main Street and they're looking at, and he said, oh, they look in the big glass window of a cafe, and he points to a table and he said, that's the very first place I ever saw your mother. She was sitting there reading a book and drinking a cup of tea, because of course she was, because that's what you do in a small town if you're a cute girl. Again, ambivalent. And he said, I almost just walked by because I was so intimidated by how beautiful she was. But then I decided I was going to go in and say hi to her. And lo and behold, we fell in love, and she became your mother and my wife, and her own human being, of course, too. And he said, do you know what the lesson there is? And they said, no, what? And he said, sometimes you have to be really, really, really brave, but only for 10 seconds. The vast lion's share of the entire negotiation process takes 10 seconds, and that's it. We tend to prepare for this and psych ourselves out as if it's this massive exercise, this marathon. We have to have every response to every possible thing they could say to us, but that's not true. By the time you get to negotiation, you have to be able to clearly express what you want. And then that's it. Because once it's out of your mouth, the job becomes theirs. The ball is in their court, right? It's no longer your ball. You just have to wait and see what they're going to respond with, and then be ready to answer that. But the hardest part is saying what you want, and that only takes 10 seconds. And it gets less hard the more you practice saying out loud with friends or your squad or your job search council, whoever it is. But getting that through my head was a game changer for me, because saying, I have an introductory package for all of my clients, it's $15K. That's it, really. That's the end of my job. They may come back and say, that's the most ridiculous thing you've ever heard. And by the way, sharing actual money amounts with each other is, find people you can actually do that with. Like, my rate has come down lately because of the whole world, and I'm sharing it with you. I think there's a big thing against doing that, but find people you can share actual numbers with. So anyway, once I say it, okay, they might say that's ridiculous. They might say we only have $3.57. Whatever that is, I've still given myself a chance to meet them halfway if I want to. I don't, and for very good reasons that I can tell you if you're interested in consulting, but that's not part of this conversation. But 10 seconds, really brave for 10 seconds. It's kind of like asking someone out on a date. Really brave for 10 seconds, okay? I love this one. Then we think we have to have a million reasons why we should get the salary we think we should get, and lists of justifications. No, say the number and then STF. Shut the fling flang up. Shut up. Shut it. Shut it. That's why it's 10 seconds. You do not have to do their job for them. Their job is trying to get you to take less or justify that. It's not your job to justify why you should get that amount. That's crazy. So stop, especially women, stop, right? There's an old, sort of a story about the cultural differences between Japan and America, and this sort of folklore that when Americans first went and started doing business in Japan, they would come into these meetings and they would say something like $100,000, and there would be silence. Excuse me, sorry, there would be silence. So they'd say 150,000, the Americans, silence. 200,000, silence. The cultural difference was there because the story is that business people in Japan, according to the story, are more thoughtful and quiet and not as blurty as Americans. I don't think anybody's as blurty as Americans, but it's good to remember that silence is not the problem, right? Talking through the silence is the problem. All right, next one. I need to have a whole bunch of stuff to say. You need a couple of phrases you can repeat. When I was going to leave Amazon in 2005, I was in a position where I was helping do some stuff that was critical to one piece of the business. And I had it. I had absolutely had it, as some of you will relate to. And I couldn't do it anymore. My book was coming out and I wanted to go consult. And I talked to this woman who was way senior to me. And I'm like, what's your advice about doing this? Like, I don't even know how to quit at this point. And she said, you need to have a phrase that can't be argued with. And so we came up with, it's just time. So if my boss at that time said, oh, no, well, is it salary? It's just time. Do you want a bigger team? it's just time. How about you stick around and I mentor you because, and he literally said this, you're going to fail because you don't know how to run a business and I will teach you. I said, and then I said, it's just time. So having a couple phrases that you can come back to, it's going to make you feel maybe a little weird. But those phrases are things like, I need it to be 190,000 or whatever. And just, moving is not an option. Whatever that is, you need to have those ready and you need to have practiced them. And it is okay to be a parrot and just repeat yourself, right? Because power comes from them pushing back on you and then getting you all engaged in this like place where you're much less confident because you're trying to come up with justifications for yourself and you're at your most nervous point. So this has been really helpful to me too. And these rabbits, this Scott rabbit is obviously repeating something. If I ask for more, they are going to get mad. This is another big woman thing. And this has changed a little bit because we're in the middle of Techmageddon, right? So there's so many people on the job market right now that, that your titles have probably shifted down if you're looking for work. Salaries have shifted down. It's a supply and demand thing, right? So this is more appropriate when, like back in the day, where like a developer could be thrown out of a window and have 4 offers before they hit the ground. That's not the case now. But it's still worth thinking about. If you say the salary range that you're looking for and the you're looking in the range of X to X, they're not going to get mad at you. We're so afraid of people getting, I'm afraid, I hate it when people, oh my God, when people are mad at me. This is my own personal, they're not going to get mad. They might say something like, that's completely out of the question, right? Or no one else on the team gets that. That's what my boss, when I first started at Amazon, said. And I just repeated myself. It has to be a lateral move. It has to be at least 190 or whatever it is. And I just kept repeating myself and then said things like, can you look into it? Those were my repeated phrases, no matter what he said. They're not going to get mad. They may push back and push back hard, at which point you can say something like, can you look into it? In this day and age, with this climate for getting jobs, you don't have as much power to push back on that because there's a bunch of people in line behind you who are willing to take the salary band, but there are some good strategies for bracketing the top end of their salary. By the way, there's a lot of stuff that I'm not covering, which is stuff that a lot of other people cover, which is how to find out what your salary can be. There's a lot of stuff about that in Never Search Alone. There's a resource that I'm going to show you, this wonderful guy, Evan Feldman, who does free sessions with people to look at their stuff. Like, there's a lot of people who do that stuff. I'm not going to tell you how to do that stuff, but I will tell you once you figure it out. Repeat, shut up, repeat again, shut up. Okay. Especially, again, women, taking a lower title will be fine. I have coached many women, and the number one regret they have come back to me with after they've taken a job is, I shouldn't have taken the lower title. If you take a title that is lower, you are not going to be able to get your work done. So you are not going to be successful. So you're going to hate your job and you're going to look like a failure. You're going to look like a failure because you took too low of a position. So my dear friend Emily went into a job, this was years ago, got a ridiculous salary, but was like, okay, I'll take the director position. Okay, all of her peers were VPs, which meant she couldn't get a damn thing done, right? And I think when you are told, here's my little quip, especially like in a startup world, well, titles don't matter here. Okay, then give me the one I want. It's a snotty way to respond to it, but still, titles do matter. And thinking about that when you negotiate, and maybe even taking a slightly lower salary, it may be worth it because you need to negotiate in order for you to be successful in your job. If you're successful, you'll be happy. If you're happy, you will get promoted and the salaries that come with it. Okay. They gave me an offer and they need me to say yes or no right now. Well, this was less true again before. Today, though, you can still get at least a couple of hours. Do not say yes or no immediately after getting the offer. I usually say never accept any offer within 24 hours. That timeline might be shrunk these days because of the negotiation realities that are out there, but you absolutely can say, I need a few hours to think about this, or I'll get back to you first thing in the morning. What you do with those hours is you talk to your squad. Either that's people that are not, either you have a job search council, which I recommend, or you have other people that you talk to about this kind of stuff. And that will give you the reality check that you need to make a sane decision. And also it gives you an opportunity to think about the other things that you can negotiate for. So Evan, who's a recruiter, did a recruiter rapid fire interview with me on one of the LinkedIn Lives. And Evan said, listen, it used to be that you could get a bunch of back and forths in negotiation. These days, with the tech market being what it is, you get one. They give you an offer, you come back, and then they come back, right? So what do you do with that one opportunity? One of the things that you do with that one opportunity is you think beyond money and vacation time. Negotiating is the moment to also ask for resource, support, and budget. Now is the time to ask for them. So I joke, like, if I took a full-time job, they better give me a $6,000 budget for sticky notes because I'm at least going to use that many. If you use Figma, they are going to have a license for Figma. If you want to do a certain amount of research studies, are they going to give you the subscription to whatever service you want? Are they going to give you the budget for giving people gift cards after they do user research? You have to ask for that now. Because as you can imagine, that's what's going to make you nail it and be happy and deliver results that are amazing. Support, budget. If you're in a senior level position and they're saying, oh, well, you're going to grow your team next year. All right, can I see the budget for next year? What are you assuming in terms of how much it's going to cost me to hire a couple of professionals in this scenario? Now is the time to look at that. And it helps if you have that job mission and OKRs because you say, this is what you want me to deliver. I can absolutely do that. Here's the tools that I'm going to need. It's more than just a sharpened pencil and a laptop. And this is really powerful because you're negotiating for things that show that you really want to deliver, which is great. Okay. That's a great bunny, by the way. That's my friend's bunny. That is Farside, the bunny. And this bunny is extremely angry because he's recently had a haircut. I have to say lots of things to convince them that I'm awesome. As I've already told you, that's not the case. You having a slew of words is never the answer. What you have to do is listening carefully, and then creating sort of your own document where you take control of the conversation and say, this is the value I'm adding. I'm already telling you, like, what I'm hearing, is this the right thing? Is this the product that you want, this job? Seem confident and know when to stop talking. The way to seem confident for those of us in the UX related field is to remember that we know how to think about users. The users in this case are the recruiters and the hiring managers. Bring all of your talents back into your brain instead of feeling like I am now a job seeker. No, you are a UXer who has a new set of users, recruiters and hiring managers, and a product that needs a little tweaking, right? And if we remember our own power with the skills that we bring to the table, that's going to put us in a better position. Okay, I wanted to focus on those particular angry rabbits. And I want to tell you that I did something else for you guys. This is my articles page on my Adlin Inc. site. And you can see the bunny rabbit in the corner. There's also this is the career badassery section. There's some other stuff there too. On the right is what you'll get if you go to adlininc.com/negotiation. I put together all of my notes in bullet points so that you could look at what I talked about and more. And you'll see at the bottom here, you'll see a picture of Evan. You'll see Never Search Alone. You'll see a recommendation for this networking book by Karen Wickery. I have no kickback from any of this stuff, but these are resources that work well for me. And you'll also see this little gray guy at the bottom, and that's what this is. This is my handout for you that I think you should print out and put up on your monitor. Tamara's brave for 10 seconds, then shut the blank up, negotiation, badassery, reality check, and pep talk. Very professional. So you can see on here the points that I make. It never gets easy. You must have a squad, and you must talk about how to talk about envy. When you talk about money with your friends, what happens is one of you are talking and you really do want to share, oh, I am now talking about a role that I think I'll get $195,000, whatever. Your friend may have a moment because they're only making 150. They want to help you, but they're having a moment. So you have to have permission to say, okay, I'm having a moment. I'm feeling really freaked out because I'm making 150. Hello? I'm making 150. We're talking about getting you 195. Okay. I know we're going to talk to me about me after this. I'm just having, okay, now let's go get you that 195. There's ways that you can get around this and be sophisticated about this. You have to have people to talk up to. The hard part only lasts 10 seconds. Say it and then shut up. That is my biggest advice to you. Don't do their job for them. The recruiting and hiring manager is not going to get mad. If they do get mad, that is a big red flag, right? Because this is professional business stuff that we're talking about. So, if you're saying some reasonable amount for the level that you're at and the seniority that you bring, and they get all mad at you, it's going to be a terrible place to work. Titles always matter. Never assume the job description's title is right. Be willing to say so and back it up. Don't talk yourself out of being qualified for something. If you see a bullet point on a job description and it's like, let's say it's UX research. And let's say one bullet on there says, do some basic SEO research, search engine optimization research. I know these are old school examples, but so that we can get a little better at it. Well, you could say, I know nothing about SEO. I know nothing about SEO, but that's close enough to what we do that if I gave you 2 weeks and 2 books and you weren't under the ridiculous pressures that you're under now at your current job, you could get good enough. It's not to say you're going to become an all-time expert, but there's so many things that you can get good enough at in 2 weeks and 2 books. So think to yourself, is this a 2 weeks and 2 books? No. Is this a 4 to 6 months? No. Is this a never? There's also another article on my site that's free, copy and paste yourself into your dream job, that talks about how to break down when we have a no reaction to a bullet. It's not just no. It could be a 2 weeks and 2 books no, or a 4 to 6 months no, right? Or hell no, because no, I'm never going to learn to code. And this will help you break those down and not just have the slammed into wall feeling of saying no. There's also something that I want to remind us as we get more senior, women and everyone. If we take titles and salaries that are too low, then we are really screwing up the people coming up behind us, and they are coming up behind us. If you're too senior and you compromise and take too low of a role, then you're taking a role that belongs to somebody coming up behind you. Now, I grew up in a culture of guilt, so guilting myself sometimes works, but this is a good thing to remember, that you stand in the number of years of experience that you have and the level of expertise that you have, and there are people behind you. So we're kind of pushing for our entire field. Never accept any offer within 24 hours of getting that offer. And then a couple of quotes from Mindy Kaling, who I think is a badass. These are the reference, and these are all on that article page that you can look at. Evan offers something for free. Karen's book is cheap and just so great. Or you can listen to a free interview with her that I did on the LinkedIn Live that's on the videos page. None of this stuff is trying to massively sell you anything. And lastly, I want to remind you, it's very important that we don't make the rabbits angry. They are already angry. So use all the notes and resources that I have in here, and remember their grumpy little faces, and use that as inspiration to remind yourself of some of these little tips and tricks when you find yourself about to go into a negotiation process. And I hope at least 1 or 2 of these help you think about this in a new way that's a little less intimidating, and give you some practical ways to attack that. And I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you have now about rabbits or otherwise. And I wanted to leave time for that.
Thank you so much. So feel free to unmute yourself and ask the question, or you could put it in chat and I'll read it out for you.
That's Ariel Vance Bronson. I see her.
Hello, I'm badly lit, but I'm here.
Aren't we all badly lit?
Oh, yeah.
Does anybody have a question? Yes, there will be a recording from this.
So if I may start off with a question, Tamara, I wanted to ask you, so when a recruiter says, I don't think there's any room for negotiation, would it still be okay to come to them?
I mean, I think a recruiter listen, recruiters are in the business of trying to get butts in seats as cheaply as possible. Not all of them are also really particularly good. It's way easy for them to say there's no room for negotiation, and then just have you cave. there is always some room for negotiation. Now, in salary, it's more difficult. There's always some room. And what I use there is say, I really, am looking in this band. Can you look into that for me and get back to me? So whatever it is I'm requesting, because they say, no, 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 I put an action item on them. Please look into this and get back to me. Also, remember, this is a really important time for two things. One is for you to remember to not just say, I need some time, then I need some time to think about this, because you can come back with the counter a little bit later, and get your friends to get together, or your job search counsel, to review this all with you and help you come up with a plan. Right. And this is where you need some time to think about it, and to remember that either right now or when you come back to them, you're going to have a list of stuff that's more than just salary. You're going to have resources, support. Maybe you're going to ask for a mentor. Maybe you're going to ask, how many licenses they have for Figma. Maybe you're going to make sure that they will pay for a conference room for usability tests. There are tons and tons of things that have no relation to the number of the salary that are also critically important for you to negotiate for. And when you get an offer, there's no one who is completely calm and sane when they get an offer something. I mean, nothing. You're going to be completely freaking out. I mean, if you're anything like me, you'll be at least a little freaking out. You need the time to process, and you need some stuff to say that you would repeat. There's no room for negotiation. Well, it's been really important to me to be in this bracket or whatever, or no, I absolutely can't move. Do you want to go look into this for me? And they'll say, absolutely, there's no way. Okay, well, can you go look into it for me? And then they'll come back, and as often as not say, all right, well, I talked to the hiring manager, we can do something, but this is, don't tell anyone. Calm. And it's not about suddenly justifying why you're good enough. They want you. You got through. So now it's a matter of how do you handle that in a calm way. And again, then it's the 10 seconds starts again when you're talking to them. And each time the same thing holds. I need a few things to repeat. I need to just repeat them whenever you're feeling uncomfortable, you have to have something to repeat. Do not answer them with an answer that you pull out of your ear and has you spluttering. Don't do that to yourself. You don't owe them that, right? So that's my relatively passionate thought about that.
Thank you so much. Emily, I think Emily has a question. Do you want to unmute yourself and ask?
Hi, yes. This just happened to me last week. I am a senior level, whatever, with 20 years of experience, which at this point feels more of a handicap. I was recruited last week with a senior level job title that fit me perfectly. They recruited me and I was so excited because I was so qualified, and this was just a very fascinating project. It's a nonprofit. They are offering, hourly, at least 30,000 less than I would normally charge. So while I was talking to the recruiter, I said, is there any wiggle room? Even, $3 or whatever. And she said, just like you said, I was like, could you check on that and get back to me? Anyway, I should mention the job itself, which was senior level, was only asked for 4 years experience,
Yeah,
of course. Anyway, they ended up not even interviewing me, which was kind of devastating because I was really excited, and it's been a while since I've been in this market. But anyway, my question is, did I do a disservice by bringing it up so early, or I should have waited until I was offered the job, right?
Yeah, I mean, you were asking them for more before. Think of it as a transaction. I know this is going to seem a little off topic, but I also think of websites asking for information. If some website asks me for my zip code, that's like asking me for a penny. Yeah, I'll give it to you. If they ask me for my social security number, it's like they're asking me for $20. They better give me a good reason to give them $20, right? That's a metaphor. What you did was you asked for more before giving them anything.
No, I think it was in a conversation with the recruiter who was like, this is what we're offering. How does that sound?
But
that's
what you didn't give them, I'm saying, is you didn't talk to them so that they got excited about you, right? And so the moment to do this, if that's an absolute showstopper, then no. But there's so many people out there right now that will say yes to that number, even senior level people.
Yeah,
that what I would have advised, the only change is go through the interview first.
Yeah, that's what I was
That's
thinking.
what I meant by you didn't give them anything. I meant that there's so much juicy goodness in your brains that they would have wanted that they didn't. And that might have changed the $3 thing, because by that time they might have realized, well, maybe we can up it by $3 because she said that
So worth it. Yeah, exactly.
she could also do some usability tests for us, whatever it is, right? She could also do some basic SEO research for us, whatever, because you had done a job mission in OKR. And I said, oh, you're also looking for these 3 other things. Are you thinking of hiring for them? Well, I would do this a different way. I think we could actually find an inexpensive outsource, because you've been doing this for 20 years, those things. So it was just the timing.
I know. That's what I was afraid of.
Yeah. I mean, that's a lesson you learn once.
Right.
But I understand, because we don't want to undervalue ourselves. Like my rates have come way down. They're way too low for who I am and what I do. And they're too low because other younger consultants should be, but it is what it is right now with early stage startups and me. It's just a bananas time.
Thank you.
I'm sorry about that. I came in hot, but it's
No, that was great. What do you
Ariel.
Yeah.
We know each other. Shocker.
Yes, I'm so happy to hear your wisdom in this area. My question, and just tell me to back off if you covered it before I hopped on, because I was a couple minutes late, but I'm curious, when you're doing negotiations, have you heard any great wisdom or have any great wisdom about how you carry your tone? What sort of you're thinking behind the scenes to allow you to exude that confidence?
I'm never confident when I do it, but I'm only allowed to say one thing. I only allow myself to say one thing. And if they come back and say that's way beyond our budget, I'll say, well, you're welcome to think about it, whatever. And I've also come to learn that sticking by my guns, if you can afford to do so, is really important, because if they're trying to push me down to like a $5,000, it's going to be terrible. It's going to be a horrible job that's not going to work for me. So the fake it until you make it is limiting your vocabulary. And the word that I love to think of and use is the word unfortunately, because it sounds like it has nothing to do with me. Unfortunately, I have to have $175,000. Unfortunately, moving is not an option. Unfortunately, without Figma, I can't do my job. It's as if somebody else, like who God was saying that, but unfortunately is such a good word. I love it. And I use it all the time. Unfortunately, that's not a possibility.
Unfortunately, I like that. That's wonderful.
It's really a good one, that and say it and then be quiet. I like these. That's why I call them mind tricks that I work on myself. That's what works for me.
I love that mantra. As a word person, I tend to use a lot of them. And so, but I've noticed that when I use fewer, I actually get greater effect.
Yeah, and you sit there and you be uncomfortable. Jared Spool, I asked, Jared Spool is a big person in our world, and I asked, like, oh, how do you charge for things? And he said there's this old story about doing the blink test, which is this old fable about like actually an optometrist and how do they price? Well, you'd say it until they blink. So somebody's sitting in the chair and they say, how much are these glasses? Oh, well, they are $100. And if they seem fine, then you say, and of course the frames are an additional 50. And if they don't blink, you say, and then of course you're going to need the coatings, which are 75. And then if they go, then you're like, okay, well, we're good at the I like thinking about, I don't do that because it freaks me out, but I like thinking about it because I know that badass people would probably do that. So I do my own version, which is just, I don't blink and I just say it again.
I like that. I like that. And I feel like I could, there's a thing that cats do that's very similar.
Cats or
Cats, they just look at you. They're like, mm. I'm sure buns do it too. They're
oh,
probably
the side eye.
yeah, the side eye. Yeah.
Yeah, when it makes you feel, and so you're essentially doing that to them. You are
Yeah.
being a immovable object, a gently immovable object, like watching them react to this very clear message. You know, now I'm sounding like Miranda Priestley. But you can be that simple and you can repeat yourself because they can't get around it and they can't tell you to stop repeating yourself.
Yes. Yep.
It's,
I like
it's
repetition too. Repetition is a strong tool in negotiation, in meetings, in doing proposals. It's been really helpful as a tool for me as well. Yeah.
so, and so is, I think that's a great point, like stuff that works in meetings, like empathic listening. So it sounds like you're saying the non-negotiable rate for the job is 150,000. I need 160,000 and some resources. Can you look into that for me?
Mhm.
And that gets you the point of, can you look into that for me? What I can tell you is all of these things, they are easier than the way you've been doing it before, but you have to practice. That's why you need a squad. You have to practice, and it's going to feel very weird the first couple times you do it, but then you're going to be like, oh my God, that was so much less horrible than it's been in the past. And less horrible is all we can ask for, people. Well, thank you for loving my background. This is actually called an Otomi cloth. It's actually a folk art embroidery piece from Mexico, and I love it. When the COVID happened, I was like, oh, I've got to get a white backdrop, and I'm like, or I could do something that my brain exploded.
Bright, colorful.
Hillary, you ask if it's ever advantageous to negotiate in writing via email. I think people have better opinions on this than me. I think getting offers in writing is something people talk about a lot. And not just try, but I don't remember where I heard that, or it may have been on some TV show with lawyers. Like, I don't know, but I think that anything in writing is definitely more solid. And generally what I've heard is that you want to get that from them as opposed to you pushing back that way. But in some circumstances, I'm sure, and still less is more. Like, there was a time when I was in a very bad business situation, and it was not related. It was, anyway, I had this email written up, and my friend, Sonia Meisenheimer, who some of you may have known from ages ago and probably can still hear her laughing all the way from Florida. She's like, no, 2 sentences. And I'm like, no, but I have to. She's like, nope, 2 sentences. And the whole thing came down to 2 sentences. I was like, oh, and it worked out way better for me. So less is more on emails as well. And you need help. You need it's so much easier to be badass on behalf of your friends and your beloveds. Like, Ariel could do it for me in a second. She'd be like, you're not charging enough. Then I come back to her and she's like, I mean, maybe you wouldn't be, but I think you would, and I would be too. Right, for myself. What are my thoughts on never being the first one to throw out a number? I mean, if at all, well, so, I think we've gotten past the point where we feel obliged to say what we've been making before. And I think that there are some good go-to phrases that people recommend, which is that, I'm looking at positions in the 160 to 180 range, right? Which is hopefully higher than you're actually willing to take. Like, maybe 150 is what you're looking for, but in the 160, and that's what you can say. And then you can just repeat it. But you should also say, there are also other things you can say that people have written about that I don't have right in front of me, but they're out there, like good things to say when you're asked about your salary. You can say things like, I'd like to know the range for this position. Also, for many, many jobs, the range is now published in the job description, which is really helpful. And that's in some jobs it's not. And then you can also, there's all sorts of places to look, and I mean, yeah, I mean, it would be better if you weren't. But if you are feeling forced to, then you need to have something to say. That's going to be hard. 10 seconds and shut up. Shut it. Does anybody else have a question? No one? No one? Anyone want to know about pet house rabbits? Specialbunny.org?
Yes, please.
There's my site that's up for you guys, and I wrote that article for you, adlininc.com/negotiation, which is not really an article, but it's a long list of notes with some additional stuff in it too, just so that you can have that. And I'm also working on some other UX stuff and courses on executive alignment and stakeholder management. And that's me and where I am right now.
You spoke about a pet rabbit rescue, Tamara. Do you want to tell us more about that?
It's called Special Bunny. It's on Instagram at specialbunny.org. That's where all the bunny PORN is, the cute pictures of bunnies. Bunnies can use a litter box, hop around the house if they're spayed and neutered, and they couple up like penguins and live their whole lives cuddling with each other, and it's the most bananas cute thing. And cats are afraid of them. And if you ever are interested in having a house rabbit, you should get in touch with me and I'll tell you all about it, or you can foster. But they're so fun and so cute. I can show you one if you want, but
Yeah, thank you. Do we have time for a few more questions?
absolutely. Are there any? I'm happy to stay on. I just didn't see any.
What do you have any, what are your thoughts on resources like levels.fyi? Do you think it's a reliable one to evaluate what you're worth? Like,
Levels.fyi. I think there's tons of resources out there. And yeah, I mean, if I was going for a full-time role, I would 100% do that. I think it's also part of the Never Search Alone listening tour process is actually coming with a set of questions that's very structured. Like, don't just do this, but take a look at the book, and asking recruiters where you fit in right now. So recruiters can look at the stuff that you have out there and they can say, given where the market is today, here's where I could put you with no further work. And a lot of people are getting really some hard feedback. They're getting like, oh, you were a VP, but right now you're a director and you were bringing in 250,000 and we just can't do that right now because there's just so much competition. So getting the real thing from a recruiter's perspective is a really valuable thing to do. I do think all those other tools are really important too, but we are in such chaos in the tech world that I wouldn't be surprised if some of those things were overly optimistic because their data is so based on roles and salaries that have been in the past that they may not reflect reality at the moment. But of course, I would do all of that stuff. I would look at all of that stuff.
thank you. So you mentioned OKRs, and there's an understanding in job search where people are like, it's a numbers game. So at what stage of your job search would you actually get into OKRs for each job, or would you suggest spending that amount of time for every job you apply, even before you hear back?
Oh, no. You use the job mission and OKR document as basically the way of taking notes during your interviews. It's the way you translate what you're hearing about. And so you could be going through a rigorous application process and they, you go into Amazon and they like put you through a million like preset questions. At the end of every one, even of those highly structured interviews, they say, do you have any questions about the role? And that's where you start to ask some questions that can help you put together your own clarity about what this job actually is. And there's tons of examples in Never Search Alone and all the free resources there that are so useful to see the ways other people have created these documents. It is not something you do for everything you apply for. It's that if you get an interview, that's when you start to, and it may not even be appropriate. It may or may not be appropriate if in the first interview with a recruiter, because they may have no idea what the job entails. But absolutely, when and if you start talking to people past your recruiter, it is an unbelievable tool. It's so freaking smart. It makes me annoyed I didn't think of it. But it's amazing. And if you don't want to do any of the other Never Search Alone stuff, definitely, I mean, get your hands on this book from the library. I don't care where you get it. I'm not trying to get you to spend money, but look at the interviewing and negotiation sections of this book and Candidate Market Fit. It's just so freaking smart. And it's so about UXing yourself as something that is out there to be consumed, or be selected and purchased, if you forgive the horror of those terms. But it just makes so much sense.
What about for jobs that have cover letters that you need to write? Would it be beneficial for you to look at the strategy with OKRs before you address things in the cover letter?
Well, you can't, right? Because you're sending the cover letter. When you're sending your resume, you don't know anything except the job description.
Mm.
So it's not until you get an interview that you start doing these job mission and OKRs. People have lots of opinions on, and by the way, there are some really good tools out there like teal.hq, teal.hq. That's a free one that helps you organize and deal with all the AI elements of putting together, different versions of your resume or whatever. Like all the AI stuff, all the bots, all of the applicant tracking systems. Like I don't have expertise on that. What I can tell you is that a huge number of people get jobs through connections and through conversations, which is why reading this book on networking, especially if you hate networking, is a really good idea because it doesn't have to be as toxic or as hard as you think. And why the human readable parts of your resume and your LinkedIn, ignoring ATS, ignoring AI, still have to be really polished and reflect you well. But no, that's the process of this, is to go through thinking about yourself, doing candidate market, doing a listening tour, doing candidate market fit, and then going out there and then revising your resume and LinkedIn once you know who you are and what you want to say. Then going out there, and then when you get an interview, how do you be really proactive and active in that interview? And a great way to do that is this job mission OKR idea.
Thank you. I was wondering if you had any tips for, let's say you're already part of a company, you're looking for a promotion, and that could be a year in the future. What can you do from now on to prep yourself for that? Is there a way for you to think that way ahead?
I mean, I think you can do the same thing. You can do this sort of job mission and OKR thing. You can first of all start talking to your hiring manager about how they can support you in progressing in your career. And you can also try to start delivering more value. So, what I like to think that and I do this with startups all the time, like picture yourself 6 months from now. What numbers will have changed by how much if you succeed? And I mean, there's all sorts of, techie ways of saying that exercise, but I'm like, let's just astral project ourselves at 6 months. We're looking backwards. We're creating a deck that says what we achieved. What's in that deck? What numbers? Is it a 20% increase in flim flam? Is it 14 more fizz bangs doing the flip flip? What is it? Create the deck. And almost you could do that for yourself. And you could say, boss, if I can achieve these things, does this put me in a good position? And or also, where is the path to growth here? Is it likely to be in this team or is it not? If it's not, can we talk about my career development plan? It's a good thing. And a manager should like that. Shitty managers don't like it. But a good manager should say, yes, I want to help you with your career. It may mean you taking a direction that's not directly with me or whatever, but that's part of what made me interested in being a people manager. So I do think some of these things also apply. And there are some people who go through the job seeker process, the job search council, as a slow seeker, which means you're not actively looking for a job right now, but you're thinking about your next move. And so if you are thinking about career development and your next move, that's also a free thing you can do with other people who are also on that pace. And all it means is that you're meeting less often. This is 11 weeks of meetings. For slow seekers, that might happen over 22 calendar weeks, But it's the same idea. And we should always be thinking about where we are in our career right this minute and where we want to go next.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This has been insanely valuable, and we really appreciate you sharing all your thoughts and expertise with us. And thank you so much for sharing the resources. And we will post this recording on our YouTube channel, and you should all get a message if you've RSVP'd on Meetup for this.
Well, thanks. It was fun to put this together. And I'm like, I'm going to use rabbits. I'm going to put rabbits on these slides. They're going to remember this. And rabbits are cute. That's what we do.
Oh,
So
they're
thank you for
adorable.
that. It was fun.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure.